century, right? This is from the previous century.
It's exciting because I think we have from these conferences just two examples.
Yeah.
One is Marek and the second one I am. But the situation is quite different. I spend all the time here, my home in Poland, and Marek in the meantime was in Australia, then was in Singapore, then was in Silicon Valley United States, not just for traveling, but for living. It means this.
It has traveled a bit. I'm not a hoarder. I don't collect those name tags, but somehow I had this one, so I thought I'm happy to leave it.
It's a green one. It's an organizing committee one. Yeah, it's not a normal. It's not a typical for all.
Yeah, it's part of the organizing committee. Thank you.
Okay, this is very unique.
So I'm happy to leave it here. This is its home, so well worried for the next 50 minutes, if you don't mind. Thank you once again. Before I start with the presentation, I wanted to tell you a bit about my role, and maybe this will also give you a bit of a background of what's going to happen in the next slide. As you can see, I have a number of positions at QUT. I have a couple of positions outside of the university as well. So I'm one of those people who cannot really focus too much. I do a lot of things. I just counted. I have 5 managers in my role as the chair of digital economy. So I work for 2 faculties, science and engineering as well as business school at QUT. So I report to the executive deans over there. But I'm also coordinating the entire research portfolio in the sort of digital age space at QUT. So I'm also reporting to an executive director of Institute for Future Environments at QUT, which is a very exciting institute because they call themselves, or we call ourselves, a transdisciplinary institute. So we basically look into societal, business, technology problems, and then we build research agenda around them. So I don't know, we take self-driving cars, and then we bring designers, lawmakers or experts in law, business people, engineers, and so on, and they all explore just this one topic. So it's very important for us that we focus on areas that are transdisciplinary. I also report to the Minister for Digital Economy in Queensland, who is one of the sponsors of my position, and I also report to PwC. So these are, and actually, I have 6 managers now because I also report to the Chief Digital Officer of Brisbane, which is the second such role in the world. This is really good for those of you who have children. You know that if one parent says no, you go to the other parent, and they say yes. So I have a similar situation with my 6 managers, so it helps to get things done. I thought that to start the morning, I don't really want to give you too much of a deep dive on our academic work or on our research, but instead I wanted to give you a taste of a typical presentation that I give to businesses, to chief executive officers, to governments as well, on the opportunities and challenges that digital economy brings. And you'll see some of our research in this, but just as a disclaimer, so that you're not surprised that sometimes I give you just a very high-level view of what's happening. So I thought I would start with just an analysis when we think about digital economy. What is happening with our data? So when you think about where our data is, well, telcos know a lot about us. The whole case of analyzing metadata of connections is happening. Retailers know our shopping profiles. Electricity companies know about us. Social networks, streaming media, universities have our profiles. Libraries. My watch is analyzing every step I take and then uploading it to the cloud. My airline knows about me, my car recognizes me, my home knows when I'm there. I have quite a few robots at home. The government knows sometimes too much about me. Hotels, taxis, food retailers, running, sports apps, and even dating, right? Dating apps, they know a lot about us, don't they, right? And then sometimes we see these cases like Ashley Madison, right? That was 2 years ago. Some of you might remember. I'm not sure if Ashley Madison was popular in this part of the world, but they clearly lied to us because they promised us we would be anonymous. That was not really the case. As you might remember, there was a big data leak, and suddenly we could analyze everything about the users of Ashley Madison. Such a beautiful website, and such a bad thing happening. There were a lot of bad things happening there, but one interesting thing for researchers was that we could start to analyze what was happening there. And we looked into the data, and we saw a number of Ashley Madison accounts per city. This is where I'm from, Brisbane. So whenever I show it to my colleagues or people in Brisbane, they're always very proud to be among the top 15 most digital cities in the world. That's what they think about themselves. But the interesting part is there was a lot of government email addresses, .gov.au, in this website. Also, it was interesting to see that this is probably about 10% of working age population of every city, right? So I don't see any Polish cities in the top 20 or top 30. But if there was one, I would expect that one in 10 of people in this room would be users of Ashley Madison. That was the case in Brisbane, basically. And I had an account on Ashley Madison, so I needed to analyze the social media as a researcher. So if you might find it somewhere there, no, probably not, because I was using a fake name. But yeah, so that's what's happening. But this means that often we don't really understand what's happening in digital economy, and we do make all sorts of mistakes, right? So the one that I mentioned, Ashley Madison, I mentioned the .gov.au address. Actually, there was an email sent to government employees in Queensland after that issue, which said, please do not use .gov.au email addresses when you sign up for dating sites. Half a year ago, there was a new data leak from a website called Adult Friend Finder. Don't ask me why I know so much about those, but there was a data leak. And again, the same percentage, not amount, but percentage of accounts from government was there. So it seems like we just don't learn it. So my role in the chair in digital economy is to work with organizations and help them understand what's happening in digital economy. We start with research, we try to understand it ourselves, but then we share that information, and we also work hand in hand with organizations on reimagining their business. So if we talk about business information systems, I'm probably a bit closer to the business part, where we look into new business models that are inspired by technology businesses. We don't spend too much time in my team say, building software solutions. We do build proof of concepts every now and then, but we are a bit closer to the business part. So one thing that we see a lot is that we're observing this shift from the age of automation to the age of digitization right now. The shift from economy of corporations to economy of people. Not that the one on the left is unimportant, but we're definitely seeing that the one on the right is growing in importance. And we see a shift from organizations focusing on economies of scale. So I do something and I do as much as I can of that one thing, to mass personalization. Because we see that that customers, that end users are expecting that they will receive products or services that are just for them, right? Sometimes people refer to it as economy of need or customer segment of one. It doesn't have to be a customer segment of one. It's just about perception, right? So I, as a customer, need to feel that the product or service is just for me. And the successful organizations from the age of digitization are really focusing on this one. We're also seeing shift from cost efficiency, so trying to minimize the costs of production of a product or service, to revenue resilience. Revenue resilience is basically a process where you understand that you might have a number of revenue streams, but some of them might be disrupted. There might be competition coming and you will lose your streams of revenue. If you are an organization that focuses on maybe one or two revenue streams, this is probably not a good idea these days. It's good to have a number of revenue streams so that you can build revenue resilience. Revenue resilience, one, is ability to stay afloat as an organization, even if one of your revenue streams gets disrupted. Two, it's an ability to create new revenue streams very quickly, right? And so sometimes for organizations, it means that they need to allow for so-called cannibalizing of their products, right? When you think about maybe an obvious case, Apple, when they introduced iPads, that was cannibalizing the market of the laptops. But from a bigger picture of the organization, it made perfect sense to create those two competing revenue streams, because the moment one of them would be disrupted, Apple would still have the second one. So that's revenue resilience. I know that it's usually, it's not a well-known concept, so I spent a bit more time on this one. We're also seeing a shift from companies being analysis intensive, so that's all about business intelligence, data analytics, and so on, to organizations becoming design intensive. So being analysis intensive is basically, an assumption that you can predict the future by analyzing the past. Right? You look into the past and you predict the future from there. It's probably not a good idea. I'm sure some of you read Nassim Taleb's book, Black Swan. Nassim Taleb used an example of a turkey, a bird that wakes up every day to find food on a plate, eat that food and enjoy the day. And it happens every day. So the second day, the turkey wakes up, finds some food, enjoys the day. The third day, the turkey finds some food, enjoys the day. And the fourth day, the turkey decides to become analysis intensive, sets up a business intelligence system, analyzes the past. Well, the past 4 days, I had food, I enjoyed the day, so with an amount of probability, the day number 5 is going to be the same, and yes, it's true, the turkey wakes up, finds the food, enjoys the day, so the probability or certainty of the model increases. The next day, the same, food, enjoyment, probability increases, or certainty increases. Day number 7, the same, day number 8, the same, and at the highest, at the peak of the certainty, the butcher comes and butchers the turkey, right? Now, this is, the business intelligence systems would not tell the turkey that it's going to be butchered on day number 9. And this is that shift from analysis intensive to design intensive. Basically, organizations recognize that business intelligence, analytics, it's good, right? I'm not saying this is bad. It's good, but it's good for a purpose. But that purpose should not be predicting the future, right? It could be improving the operations and so on. So with that in mind, companies of the economy of people recognize that they need to design the future. Alan Key, who used to be a chief researcher, a chief scientist at Apple, used to famously say that the best way of predicting the future is to design it, and that's what the companies from the age of digitization do. All right, so they're not looking into the past to predict the future. We're seeing those changes, and we're also in my team trying to spend a lot of time working with organizations. And imagine, business world is like a game. We're trying to tell those organizations what's happening below the black spots, right? So around those corners. And I spent a lot of time working with organizations from specific industries and telling them what's happening outside of their industries and how that can disrupt them. Right? So I'll give you an extreme example, and I won't give you an answer right now, but when I work with my university, sometimes I say that airlines, we have an airline in Australia called Virgin Australia. I sometimes say that Virgin Australia could disrupt QUT, some of the business. There could be a competition. Right? I'll leave it to you for a few minutes how they could compete with QUT, and later on I'll let you know what the answer is. Right? So an airline could disrupt a university. We recognize that that often the models that we've developed in the past are models for the world that is going away. So we're also trying to, and it's a beautiful world, by the way, that is slowly going away. So we recognize that we need to change our approaches to many things. I spend a lot of time with organizations trying to make them think differently. So what do you see on this photo? It's a case of distracted driving, right? Distracted driving. What is this lady distracted by? coffee, conversation, right? Mobile phone, did someone say mobile phone? So I completely disagree with it. I believe she's distracted by the car. All right, when you think about it, she was probably almost born with an iPad with her hand, enjoying life, socializing, having coffees and so on. And then suddenly she got a job and she needed to start to commute. And the car entered her life. And while most of organizations, and this is just a metaphor, right? It's not about the car, although I did have a presentation with this slide to Queensland Police Services, and then it was very literal. But right now it's just a metaphor, right? We often make wrong decisions. I don't want to say misunderstand, but make wrong choices when it comes to realizing what is the real problem, right? So the real problem here is not the mobile phone and the coffee. The real problem here is the car. And rather than trying to focus on removing the phone or the coffee from the hand or from this photo, we should be focusing on removing the car from the photo. And it doesn't have to mean we should be talking about self-driving cars. In this particular case, answers could be very varied. It could be new modes of work, whatever this lady is actually trying to achieve right now, which we don't see from the photo. But speaking of self-driving cars, we could say, well, hey, this is then why Google is building self-driving cars, right? Or are they? Right? So again, we spend a lot of time with organizations thinking what is happening here, and some people would say, well, they're building cars because they want to help people who don't want to spend time driving, right, commuting. But is this the case? Why is Google building a self-driving car?
To collect data.
To collect data, excellent, right? Because that's how they, that's how they make a lot of money. What was there? Diversify their business, absolutely. So the whole alphabet as an organization, Google Search is just one, Google Mail is one, just another one, absolutely. The other thing is, I believe this is the mobile phone of the future, because this device is going to have or has a screen in it. And the person inside this box will be sitting in front of a screen, and whoever owns that screen owns the interactions with the user or the person inside. And it might be very helpful. It might help with work, whatever you want to do in a self-driving car. And I don't know what you want to do in a self-driving car. So you could be sleeping, you could be watching movies, you could be working, you could be partying. But whoever has the screen will have access to the service delivery. So maybe in future we won't have mobile phones. Hopefully we won't have mobile phones. But this would be the new ways of interacting with users. And again, maybe what I'm saying is again could be questioned. So my point here is, hey, could we look deeper into those? Could we think differently? We often have organizations who come to us and say, this is the problem we have, and we spend a lot of time realizing that they have a different problem. So we don't solve problems that organizations come to us with. We first make sure we tell the organizations what problems they have. While we do it, we help them climb the so-called digital intelligence pyramid. Right? So we spend a lot of time on trying to understand where organizations sit on their digital intelligence pyramid. We believe that as a team, we believe that there are 3 levels there. They apply both to individuals and organizations. There will be just different examples. With individuals these days, digital literacy is me being able to set up a Facebook account or maybe an Instagram account. Digital behavior is me knowing whether I should use my .gov.au address when setting up an account with Ashley Madison or not. Digital behavior is me knowing whether I should use my .gov.au address when I know how to do Ashley Madison or not. Digital behavior to do them. Digital elegance is a set of skills that allows me to create value in digital space. So it might be writing a tweet that gets retweeted 10,000 times or 20,000 times. This is really, sometimes we call it digital impact. And for organizations, this would be similar. Literacy would be perhaps ability to deploy an enterprise system. Digital behavior would be ability to use it to its best potential. Digital elegance would be even jumping above that and really creating a competitive advantage. What is both frustrating and exciting is that this is a moving target. So 20 years ago, digital literacy was about starting up Windows 3.1. Right now it's about Facebook. I don't know what it's going to be in another 20 years. And the same for organizations. So, we know that this is the framework we want to think about, but it's definitely, it's moving and it's changing. When we look around the world, and when we do our research, we're also trying to understand what are trends that are happening in business, technology, and society. And then we're trying to answer a question of how a digital economy researcher or how a business information systems researcher could address those trends and perhaps work with organizations. My work is very much an applied research type of work. How could we work with organizations and help them make the best of the opportunities present? So I'm going to, in this slide, go through a number of trends that we're seeing at the moment. First of all, we're seeing a completely changing trends in expectations of our customers. I'll use a few examples from the education space. For instance, this is a business from California called Udacity. Some of you, I'm sure, know it. They developed a new education model. They focus on so-called nano degrees. So they basically allow people to just learn for a few weeks and learn a skill that is in demand in the work marketplace. And after finishing those, the few weeks, you get a certificate, and you basically start to get job offers. And the interesting part is, now, so first, this is the expectation. I don't want to spend, in this particular case, a few years developing a set of skills. I want a few weeks. I want it now, and I want a job after it. And this should be scary for universities. They actually offer you money back if you don't get hired within 6 months of graduating with this nano degree, right? So that's what's happening, and I'm asking myself, in Australia or every university you have to pay for, when will students start to ask for a refund if they don't get a job after graduating from a university? And that will likely be soon. So sometimes we also refer to it as zero cost expectation. So the customers expect not to pay a cent for a thing, right? So remember how we used to buy those GPS devices in our cars, and they would cost $200–300, and then we would pay every 3 months for updates of the maps. These days it's all free of charge on our mobile phones and Google Maps or whatever other application you might be using. We used to pay for text messages. They're absolutely free of charge. When we hired people, we used to pay hiring agencies. These days you go on LinkedIn and it's mostly free of charge. The best part is we still pay for it. We pay for it with our time, with our attention, and so on, but we don't pay for it with money. The best part is, even though it's free, we still have expectations that are the same as expectations from a paid product. So this is one trend, changing customer expectations. We're also seeing completely new channels of interacting with customers. Again, a very interesting space for research in business information systems. How do we tap into those completely new information, new channels of interacting with customers? So this is the new speaker with a screen from Amazon, so that's the Alexa with a screen. I'm asking myself, how do we get into that device as a business or even as a university, because these are the new channels of interactions. I want to interact with my service providers or product sellers from inside my home. Right now, this is highly monopolized, and it's an area that is hard to get access to. Some of you know this application, Duolingo. Again, the new modes of interactions, not only channels but modes of interactions with customers. Here, you squeeze your products or services into the last 10 seconds of the time of your customer. And this one I'm particularly excited about is a model where you start to allow your devices to make purchasing decisions on your behalf. Right, so right now on Amazon, you can, and Amazon is just an example. Right now on Amazon, you can buy a dishwasher or a washing machine that, when configured properly, so you have to go through those steps of configuration. When configured properly, it will reorder dishwashing liquid or washing liquid when it runs low on it. Right, so basically, what we're having here is a robot that is making purchasing decisions on your behalf. Okay, it's like those smart fridges that can reorder products. Similar approach. Now, for BIS research, this is profound. People probably don't think enough about it. I call it a device as a customer, and we're seeing the first time in the history we're seeing cases where it's not humans who make business decisions, but it's devices that they have that make business decisions on their behalf. Now, it gets very exciting the moment you think about how this market will develop. So right now, this particular dishwasher is ordering a dishwashing liquid from Amazon, and it's a predefined dishwashing liquid, right? But I'm expecting that in a couple of years, a few governments will realize that it looks a bit like a monopoly. You might remember a case of Windows, Internet Explorer in 1990s, where Microsoft had to open up their system. So the governments will ask those fridges and those dishwashers to start ordering other products based on customer preferences. There might be another level later on where the fridges and the dishwashers will get so smart that they will recommend products to us. But the point is, the moment a dishwasher is making a purchase on our behalf and they can buy anything, the question is, how do you market to a dishwasher like that? How do you convince that dishwasher to buy your product and not somebody else's product? So I'm expecting a rise in this new space, which is basically marketing to devices. We're seeing some examples of that already, for instance, in online advertisements where there's negotiations happening in real time. But I'm expecting, and I'll probably spend a bit more time over the next at least a few months, and possibly a couple of years, exploring that space of devices as a customer. We're also seeing a new trend of customers becoming competitors. This is a website in Australia, spoonfeedme.com.au, where students of QUT are submitting summaries of lectures from QUT to this website, and they're reselling them. So imagine you're a student, you go to a university, you write down all your notes, and then you upload it, and for every download you get a couple dollars, or maybe, I don't know, 50 cents, right? But basically they're reselling our content, right? The university is kind of okay with it because we think that that shows that it's a pretty valuable content. But this is again just a symptom and something that we'll probably see more and more. Customers basically selling the same products or services that they buy from others. So we have our lectures online already like that. We see the rise of platforms where our employees can also be our competitors. So we could have an example where, Coursera, sort of focusing on the education industry here, Coursera, nothing stops myself as an individual to become Coursera and start offering courses there and competing with the university. It's an ability to create new revenue streams for an employer. And so sometimes for organizations it means that they need to allow a lead that competes with my employer. So again, a very interesting new trend, and we're definitely exploring this as much as we can. So these are a number of trends that we're seeing at the moment that I think each of them is giving rise to a lot of interesting questions in the business information systems space. Now, I also spend a lot of time working with organizations trying to show them that the traditional way of looking at competition is probably not not the best way of looking at competition. So rather than thinking about what products or what services customers want to buy and how can we make them better, cheaper, faster, I don't know, we're really trying to figure out what they're trying to achieve. So, Netflix recognizes that they're competing with sleep, right? They're also apparently competing with red wine, and they're saying that it's very hard to compete with red wine, right? Why is that? Because, people watch Netflix not because they want to watch a movie, but because they want to, they're tired and they just want to spend, the time in the evening in a nice way. So that's why they're competing with red wine, and they're also competing with sleep because, sleeping is nice just as well. In a similar way, when you think, this is by the way, Clayton Christensen's concept of jobs to be done. When you think about it, Clayton Christensen used an example of a mattress that you sleep on, and a customer who was waking up every day with an aching back, when you don't have a jobs to be done perspective like that, you would think, hey, they need a better mattress, right? And let's build a better mattress and sell it to the customer. But when you think about jobs to be done, this particular customer used a slightly different competitor. He basically took a painkiller. So in the jobs to be done world, if you wake up with an aching back and you don't want that aching back, a painkiller is a competitor to a bad mattress, right? Because you can take that painkiller and you don't have an aching back anymore. So why should you buy a new mattress, right? And there's a number of other competitors to a bad mattress, such as a massage and so on and so on. In a similar way, remember I asked you about the competition between QUT and Virgin Airlines. The answer is as follows. Some of our students come to QUT because they want to build networks. They join MBA studies, not to learn, but because they want to meet other CEOs, other future CEOs. And this is the only goal that they have, right? They have to go through the courses and so on, but they just want to spend time with fellow business people. From that perspective, Virgin Airlines is in the business of putting a lot of people into a plane, and they could sit them next to each other. They know a lot about them. So instead of offering a better seat, an exit row seat, they could start offering a CEO row seat. And maybe for $50, you could sit next to someone you might want to do business with, right? And so this is the moment you start to think about jobs to be done, you start to think about competition that is coming from the industries outside of your industry, right? And again, so this is the business part of the business information systems that I'm focusing on, where we spend a lot of time with organizations learning how to reimagine those business models. And then we have to implement them, and technology is always an enabler here, right? Or in most cases, it's an enabler. So that's why this is happening in the business information system space and not in some other areas. We also try to, every time we work with organizations, we try to recognize whether what we're doing is bold or ambitious or not, right? And this very, very rough diagram. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that when we try to improve the quality of service that we're offering to the customers, we could, this is the typical enterprise systems approach. And by the way, I spent almost 10 years working for SAP for their research and innovation group, so I know a bit about enterprise systems. In enterprise systems, you can increase customer satisfaction through improving quality of service, but only to a specific level, because all you're doing is, you're shortening processes, you're making, a process smoother, basically. But it's very asymptotical. At some stage, you cannot improve anymore. So we're always asking ourselves, can we just jump above that line to what we call surprise and delight of our customers? And can we not just improve what we already have, but really completely change the interactions that we that we might have with customers. And it's a hard task. I work a lot with federal government in Australia. A couple of years ago, they introduced a new system where you would go to one place, change your postal address, and every department would get an updated postal address. And they thought it was a fantastic achievement. They put a few $1 million into it, had I think 2 or 3 PhDs coming out of the process and so on. And they thought this was the above the line surprise and delight innovation. But when you ask customers, for them this is hygiene factor. They just, of course, they expect that when they change address in one place, everywhere else it changes. So the government didn't actually realize that what they were doing was very basic. It's very important, but it was very basic. We showed them that it's not really the case, and we keep being confused all the time, even in private life. If I go home and I do the dishes, I think I'm doing above the line surprise and delight for my wife. She thinks it's hygiene factor, right? So someone else needs to tell me that. And we're, as the university, as the group at the university, we're focusing on the quality of service a lot with our partners. So above the line. How do we do it? We don't just brainstorm. We don't just try to come up with new ideas by sitting in front of a whiteboard and waiting for a new idea to show up. We use so-called ideation lenses. So we have research streams in various areas, and we look into those. So for instance, we have a research stream on proactive organizations. This is an approach where we look at processes inside organizations, and we're asking ourselves, could we trigger those processes even before customers ask for them? Or could we start delivering services even before customers ask for them? And in digital economy, this is becoming increasingly possible because we might know about a certain need of a customer even before they know it, right? For those of you who have your Fitbits, you might know that Fitbit could analyze the data already now and recognize that you're going to be sick in a few days. They're not sharing this information with you because in order to do it, they would have to get FDA approval. They would have to become a medical device, and they just don't want to go through those processes. But it's entirely possible already now to know with a high dose of certainty, a viable dose of certainty, so it makes business sense to do the next steps. It's possible to predict that a customer will definitely need a service, right? And if you have a partnership with this customer, you can start offering those. So in the proactive organization space, I work very closely with Queensland government. We're delivering proactive government services. It sounds a bit creepy, I know, that that the government comes to you and says, we know what you want, and here it is, right? But we have found a solution to make it not creepy, and I'll show you some examples in a second. Another approach that we're taking is we're looking into network effects of customer bases. So again, my beautiful drawings here. What this one is trying to show is that the typical organization is more in this red part of the diagram, where as the number of customers grows, a value for individual customer does not really change much, and it can even drop at stages. But a lot of digital organizations, those that are successful in the 21st century, are very much making use of the fact that they have more and more customers. So think about Facebook or Twitter. Obviously, the more users you have, the more value there is for the customers. But if you're a bank, typically, if you're a customer number 1 million and the bank gets another 2 million customers, the value doesn't really change. We're working a lot with banks and trying to understand how we could move them to that line above, right? So for a bank, it would be all about recognizing what are some communities that the bank might have that we could tap into. It could be, homeowners, for instance, that it makes sense to turn into a community and then have them work together. I just heard that in Poland there's a new cult, a new hype. It's called Thermomix. I'm not sure really how popular it is in Europe. It's very popular in Australia. It's a kitchen device. It's a cooking device, but it comes with a social network. So you basically, if you have a question, if you need a recipe, you go online, and within 5 minutes, someone comes back to you who has a Thermomix as well and gives you the recipe and so on. It's amazing because the network is probably more valuable than the device, and that's creating an amazing stickiness for the customer. So Thermomix, if you haven't heard about Thermomix, next time you hear about it, it's a cult. Stay away. It's when you start working with them, it's really hard to leave that. When you become an Another approach that we have is we try to copy business models from other industries, right? So I'll give you a very specific example. So this is like a Windows icon for copy and paste, right? So this is copy. I worked recently with Queensland Urban Utilities. Queensland Urban Utilities are an organization that is delivering water to homes, but also taking away sewage from homes. And they came to us and said, hey Marek, we need to explore how digital economy could help us thrive in the 21st century. How could we make use of our information systems in a slightly different way? And so we started asking questions such as, how would Virgin Airlines run Queensland Urban Utilities, right? So that's how this model works, right? Virgin Airlines would probably make sure that every employee, it's a young female, I don't know, it's very exciting and so on. We would start to ask, well, how would Hilton, the Hubble network, run Queensland Urban Utilities? I don't know, maybe you would get an upgrade of quality of your water once a week when you work with them. So those ideas didn't make sense, right? Well, didn't make too much sense, but we still have to go through those processes. And then we stopped at Google and we asked ourselves, how would Google run Queensland Urban Utilities? And the company immediately had an answer. They said, well, they would make it free of charge. They would collect data about the users and sell it to advertisers, right? We had another constraint in this project with Queensland Urban Utilities. They came to us and said, we're deploying a network of smart sensors, and how could we use that network of smart sensors? So obviously it made a lot of sense because, as you know, if you analyze a smart sensor, and we had a good intro to big data analytics yesterday, or IoT analytics, you could even recognize that, what type of a washing machine a person has, so you could offer them a newer one and so on. But we weren't too happy with that because we thought that Queensland Urban Utilities already know things like that, so we wanted to push it a bit more. So we moved that sensor in our analysis to a sewage pipe, and we have some great researchers at QUT who can analyze nanomaterials, nano sensors. They can analyze all sorts of traces. So we said, well, we could even analyze the sewage and tell exactly what's happening inside the household, which is even better than just analyzing water usage. But again, we weren't too happy with that because we thought, yeah, maybe they already thought about it. Police in Queensland already analyzes sewage on a suburb level. They try to find out which suburbs use how much drugs, basically. So they already do it. So we thought, hey, let's push it a bit more. So we took that sensor and we pushed it upstream. And we installed it in a toilet. It's still research, right? We're not yet offering it to customers, right? So we installed it in a toilet. It's a very small sensor that recognizes a few traces like blood, sugar levels, and a couple of other things. At Queensland Urban Utilities, they call this project just like Fitbit, but starts with SH. Fitbit, right? That's how they call it, and we actually have a prototype now. Queensland Urban Utilities are ecstatic about it. Why are they ecstatic about it? Because they realize that they're not in a business of moving water and sewage only, but they can actually be in a business of moving data. Or they can take the data, they can become a platform, a data platform. They could start offering And of course, the customers would have to agree, right? It's an opt-in, and I'll get to it in a second. It's an opt-in process. They could say your doctor could subscribe to the data coming from your toilet, and they could give you a call. So, if they find, I don't know, traces of blood 5 days in a row in a toilet, they could give you a call and say, hey, something strange might be happening. You might want to visit me, right? So basically, they are becoming a data platform. And not only Queensland Urban Utilities became interested in that, Queensland Health, which is, as far as I know, the largest health organization, as in a department in the world. Queensland is a pretty big state. They funded, they gave $100,000 to a startup created by students working on this project to develop the prototype, because they want to deploy those smart toilets in remote and regional Queensland in public toilets. All they want to do is they want to understand what are potential health issues, because for them, for those of you who know a bit about Australia, right now, there's a lot of places where the only way you could get a doctor is if they fly to you, right? It's called the Royal Flying Doctor. So Queensland Health is basically trying to plan delivery of health services based on what they know about people. And the smart toilet is a kind of great kind of no touch approach for them. So there's a number of organizations who are now very interested in it. And the only thing we did really is we applied this model. Try it yourselves, right? How would someone else run your business? Ideally, someone from outside of your industry. So this is the smart toilet story. With proactive organizations, we spend a lot of time now working with Queensland government on services for the governments. The way it works is by analyzing digital information, we can forecast that something is going to happen, we can detect that it's happening, and we can also detect that a customer is doing something about it. So the last one, the action part, is usually a case where the customer is calling the government or maybe going online, and we're just collecting all the data about the customer even before they talk to anyone. But once we know that, right? Once we know that, let's use maybe a specific example. Marek is going to lose a job because the government has some forecasts on probability of losing a job, and Marek is a watchmaker, and watchmakers, 95% of watchmakers will lose their jobs in 5 years. So the government can already forecast that. It could also detect the fact that Marek is losing a job because the employer would have to inform the government or the tax authorities and so on and so on. So with that in mind, the government or any organization that is a proactive organization could play different roles. The government could be a recommender, so they could reach out to Marek and say, hey Marek, we analyzed your data, and by the way, you allowed us to analyze your data, and we see that you might be losing a job in a few years. You have two options. One is to not do anything, the other, and just wait for it, and the other is maybe do some upskilling, and here are some courses that you can consider. As an assistant, the government would say roughly the same thing, but they will also say, we actually have a spot for you on this course. Press here, and you will start to learn a new skill very soon. On autopilot, well, actually, autopilot would probably not work very well in this case, or at least people would not like it. The autopilot would be the government actually signing up for a course, so you have to go there. But there are other cases where autopilot makes perfect sense. For instance, when my driver license expires, right now I need to go to a Department of Transport and Main Roads and fill out all those forms and so on. But autopilot will be when the government sends me a new driver's license, basically, just like what my bank does, right? So when my credit card expires, I get a new one on autopilot. So we've been doing quite a lot of research on it in Australia, but also with a number of universities in Germany on trying to understand what are the preferences of people when it comes to different ways of delivering proactive services, when it feels very creepy and people just don't want it, and when it feels absolutely fine. Also, what are behavioral aspects of it. Also, we recognize we're already starting to see the first signs that it really depends on where in the world you live, right? So you know, and it's not yet. We still need to confirm that, but it looks like, for instance, in Australia, people are a bit more okay with the fact that the government analyzes the data and shares the data among the departments and then becomes proactive. And in Germany, we see that people are very much against data sharing and that proactive approach in general cases. Right now, we're trying to understand where specifically it works better, where it doesn't. And when you think about it, this is again a beautiful space for research for business information systems, because this is exactly what a lot of organizations are trying to achieve, not just the governments. They're basically trying to stay competitive by predicting customer needs and offering them. And it's not a job for marketers. It's not a job for marketing departments. It's a job for information systems to really understand how to design those solutions. So I'm always very proud to show that. If you look into the upper right corner, this is Queensland government. They're already using the language that we developed. So before we started, they didn't know what proactive services were. Now they're talking about delivering proactive services to citizens. In fact, this photo that you can see here, this is a photo from one of our so-called innovation sprints where we developed. This was a sprint on opening a cafe. So we developed a process where government would be proactive, working with individuals who want to open a business. After an initial trigger from an individual, the government would say, here's the next step you need to go through, here's the next step you need to go through. So being very, very proactive rather than waiting for the citizens. I mentioned we did it in a sprint. It's a design thinking inspired approach. Some of you who know SAP, I mentioned that I worked for SAP. You know that they work a lot in the design thinking space. Basically took that, we renamed it to design doing rather than just design thinking. We spent about 6 weeks on really trying to understand what the problem is. So 2 weeks on understanding what the problem is. This is actually the hardest and the most exciting part, because it's never been a case, and we've done quite a few of those sprints already. It's never been a case that the problem that the customer came to us with was the problem that we were solving. We always found out, it's usually taking a few steps back, we always found out that the problem was completely different. And then we spent another 2 weeks. We bring the client, the customer, to the university. They spend 2 weeks with us full time. We help them come up with a solution. We do not come up with a solution. We help them come up with a solution. At least that's how it looks. That's mostly because we know that if we come up with a solution, there's a problem with the implementation of that solution. They need to feel that they came up with this idea. Then we spend another 2 weeks developing all sorts of plans of development. In the process, we develop proof of concepts if we need them, and so on and so on. I don't have enough time to really go through the details of that, but that's roughly how we work. Feel free to chat to me after the presentation. I'm happy to talk for hours about how we work. It's a very busy 6 weeks. People are usually extremely tired after those 6 weeks of work. But the good thing is we rotate our researchers. So one researcher spends those 6 weeks maybe every 3 or 4 months on such an innovation sprint. So that's a couple of photos. We have some colorful spaces that we work in, but also the big one, the white photo, we actually spent a lot of time every few days on bringing all of the stakeholders and updating them on our progress, making sure we're going in the right direction and so on. So that's roughly how we work. This is that one of the services that was developed in this way. This is opening a cafe in Brisbane or Logan. Logan is the small town next to Brisbane, which is again the first of those proactive services that are being delivered by Queensland government. This is another one. We have a few of them already. This is a grant and business support finder where you need to answer a few questions, but after that it's all fully proactive. What I'm very proud of, and I've never seen it anywhere else in the world, is this yellow bar, which is saying we are trying something new. Help us improve by telling us what you think of the service, both what you like and what needs work. Sorry, so this is basically the government saying this is better, and bear with us if something goes wrong. There's always a traditional way of doing things with us as a government, but we're proud to give you this better version of our services. Not seeing any other better services delivered by government in the world. In the last minute or two, just very quickly, we run as a team for our organization, Disruptive Innovation Leadership course. So basically we spend 2 days with executives teaching them new ways of ideation. The reason I'm telling you that, by the way, is because I think a lot of our universities are expecting researchers to spend a lot of time with industry, running industry projects. And I think that the things that I'm showing you right now are the ones that help us attract a lot of partners, right? So we run those two-day long courses on disruptive innovation. Lots of buzzwords in this title, but it works in the market, so that's how it works. We remember the graph I showed you with the growing value for customers, depending on the size of the organization or customer base. We're on Student Design Jam. We asked ourselves the question, how can we be stronger as a university with every new student? And so we designed this new offer, which is called Student Design Jam, where we take 20 to 40 students and we for 1 day, and we have them work on a problem of a customer, and customers actually pay for it. Students get some sort of compensation in credit points and so on for that work. They also get some potential job offers. So we run those quite regularly. This is one. We do produce a lot of public reports. This is not all of them. So every couple of months, our research ends up with a report on something. One of them is Proactive Organization. You can go on our website. I'll show you the URL in a second and learn more about it. But it's important for us to really share all the information or all the research that we work on. We even record podcasts. So these are titles of our podcasts. 10-minute podcasts for our customers, clients, partners to listen to, and we try to talk about hot topics basically. Again, this all brings every few weeks someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I listened to this in that podcast. I would like to work with you on the topic, for my organization." So that's what we do. And that's how I approach with my team the digital economy space. I do hope, I really hope that you find it relevant for the business information systems community as a whole. Thank you very much for your
as you see, we started exactly at 9 and it's now 10 exactly. So it's scheduled. So this is typical of what is usual, possible. And Mark, thank you so much for so many And the way of thinking in Britain is to be in touch, in direct touch with people. So I think we will have an excellent opportunity to discuss with Marek during the coffee break. And a little bit nostalgia for you, and the book of Poznan. You are expert in this issue, but I think it could be a nice thesis in 20 years to have this badge and to have this book. Okay, thank you very much.
Coffee break.
Just a moment, please, because today during the coffee break we also have the poster session. So basically, just in front of the hall you will see different posters. So yeah,